Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews, and this is Refuge from Narcissism. And this refugee video is a sponsored video sponsored by John for Anonymous. And here is Anonymous's story. I knew a landowner investor from the downtown because he cut a rental deal to a company I worked with. It was a weird company. I was 1099 at the time, making a decent salary with it, and that's another story. It was an advertising agency ran by Narcissists who were paying half the rent in a really cool space and then using the employees to do the work that the landowner wanted. I was underpaid and treated like an employee when I wasn't even an actual employee, but whatever. This seemed to be the way a lot of people like to do it around there. You're not an employee, but they think you're their personal property. I heard from the managers that the landowner of the office was asking for more work and trade than what they owed to him. So they said he was scamming them, but due to their own shenanigans and my upbringing, I was more impressed that they had a cool place without having to pay for all of it. They were complainers as well and abusive, so it was hard to tell when they weren't complaining or when they were actually upset. And quite frankly, they liked it that way, I think. So I assumed, I guess, they were exaggerating. The landowner showed up one day, flamboyantly talking about how we were changing the world and we, as the advertising agency, and him needed to put ourselves out there and lift people up. He, of course, was taking credit for this uplifting because he owned land. It was very weird. He constantly talked about how great Jesus is and good God is and how God had blessed him so much and he needs to give that back. In other words, be in power to foresee others' dreams. I now take it. I thought he was a very religious and good person and that he had owned a lot of downtown property because of God's favor, like he claimed it was. Who the fuck was I to question this? It seemed like a fine enough claim and gracious. I will be rolling my eyes now that I know the truth. But at the time, I really looked up to him with respect. He was trying to get a musician a record deal, which again seemed like such a generous thing to do, although he has no actual musical background or merit in marketing. Him and his wife showcase artists at bars, sometimes free of charge, so I thought it was cool. In retrospect, they were banking off other people's talent, acting like heroes. They were using desperate artists. Yeah, it's a grifter scam. Okay, you hear the use of the word grifter a lot these days. A lot. And what a grifter does is basically take advantage of other people's talents and take credit for them on their own. Grifters don't actually produce anything. They'll act like they do. They'll act like they're changing the world. Okay, but what grifters are, and they use God a lot of times, and we know any narcissist using God is really just an atheist trying to replace God with themselves. We went out for drinks after work one day because I was placed on one of his projects in the pipeline. He calls himself the Arts District Manager. He was very commanding when we would go out and try to recruit me to do things outside my job by talking very intensely at me with a locked, intense cobra stare with a mean look like I was depriving him, and then talking very loudly in public so other people in the area thought that I owed him something and I was slacking, I guess. Yeah, the performer. The performer, they're out there, they're holding court, they're being loud, but it's always at somebody else's expense, usually yours. These are giant red flags. Giant red flags when people are out there putting on a performance, okay, acting like they're talking to you, but they're talking loud enough so they could be overheard, when the goal is really they're using you to humiliate you, to try to make themselves look like they're in some sort of position of power. That's what it felt like, and demanding we do more for him so we can save people. There were a lot of familiar people around, and I felt embarrassed. I didn't want to mess with the company's rental situation. I didn't want to mess the company's rental situation up in some way or lose my job. So I tried to excuse myself from this guy's presence because he was trying to guilt trip people into feeling like they should be doing more for him. I didn't know if he felt like he was being taken advantage of, and I couldn't assess the situation. Maybe he was, and he was just pleading his case. No, he's just advertising at your expense. That's all he's doing. I ran into him at his wife's wine bar. The musician girl who was getting the website became an acquaintance of mine. She knew my sexual orientation because she had a crush on me, and I explained to her the situation. The landowner caught wind of this and told me I'm not all that straight. His wife at the bar, when he said that talking to someone, I really felt uncomfortable and disgusted, actually. The wine bar is also an art gallery. I brought a romantic interest there one day, and the landowner saw me and scoffed at me with angry eyes when I introduced my male friend to him. Then stormed off. I was so confused, and he just made me feel like a piece of trash. Jumping forward years ago, I was isolated in the country because of familial abuse and abandonment. I had untreated trauma because my family accused me of being lazy when I was distressed and depressed, and claimed I was a failure and disappointment, suggesting I am evil for thinking they did me wrong. I had to quit a scheduled part-time job or full-time job and resort to freelance because trauma was there. But I was always told by literally everyone that PTSD is a veteran's problem. Yeah, okay. If PTSD was a veteran's problem, there wouldn't be 30. I wouldn't have near 30,000 subscribers. Okay, and I sure as hell don't have 30,000 veterans on my channel. I have a few. I have many. It took years to figure out how to pick up my life with the building and impending doom that finally struck when I couldn't show up for work any longer without fully coming to terms with the notion that I was going to end my life if I forced another day of focusing for a full shift. I should have been on government support about 10 years prior, to say the least. For years I drifted, offering barter and trade for living space. I found out about government EBT finally because someone told me it when they realized that the agony I had complained about for years, just some spoiled idiot white boy begging for more spoiled, lazy white male privilege. For many years I had lamented to no avail to my friends about how tortured and unbearable I felt inside. They didn't care. They forced me to go places I didn't want to go by tricking me. They lied about me behind my back, called me lazy just as well, exploited me, and many far leftist so-called friends even screamed at me constantly about how easy my life was. I finally ran out of places to go. I slept outside in the cold for one night. It was raining. I walked to a coffee shop where I knew some people from the time when I had a full-time job. I ran into the so-called landlord of the office space from the company I worked. At this time, I randomly received a freelance lead with another client as well, which put several $1,000s into my hands. So I figured I could potentially rent something now I was now in the city. I asked this guy if he had a rental apartment available. He said he did not, but that he would temporarily place me in a building he's renovating until he could get another spot open up. When I picked out a space in this construction zone, I went and picked out a space in this construction zone. It was basically an abandoned building. The bottom 3 floors were still being used, but the top 5 floors were recently emptied. One of the floors had some out-of-work woman living on it. He said I could pay him several hundred a month. The rest could be exchanged in advertising. At the time, I had 15 years of advertising experience. I know how to code, make graphics, brand, make games, and do social marketing, to say the least. I decided I would look at the downtown like a puzzle and start connecting it, and making it a holistic place digitally and in print, so that it felt like a whole, instead of a boring cluster of space with some buildings random people rented out. Well, having this vision was the first thing these people wanted to take from me and then ruin my reputation for. I thought it was petty envy and competition, but it was far worse than that. They alienated and triangulated me while they cut me out of every meeting that involved my ideas and projects. That's what grifters do. They take your ideas and then they isolate you out. It seems to be the way almost all these people treat artists and visionaries. They see us as a means to an end, steal our visions, claim it as their own, and then erase us. It seemed like a good opportunity. I didn't expect even these so-called die-hard Christians to be so wicked, as I thought they were my friends. I was sleeping downtown in this renovation zone. There was no bath or shower, no running water. Construction workers would walk in and out of my space sometimes. It was really inappropriate. The windows didn't open. It was overheating. After some months, a friend and I ripped the seal off the window so I could get some fresh air, which is fine because they were going to do this all eventually. I couldn't get settled in because I was waiting for an actual residential space. I had no key. I began doing some work for him and his business. These places were booming years ago because of what some bartenders were doing online for it. So I decided to revive the strategies and make it happen again. None of the bartenders were doing anything online for it anymore, and they had no online presence. Some of the places were basically dead. Immediately, they began implementing my strategies, ideas, and my advertising made them look very professional, and the bars became very visible online as a whole arts district. What really annoyed me was that the people who were taking my strategies and implementing them were then claiming they did this all on their own accord and taking credit for it. I was quite offended because I knew my financial situation and needed credit for what I do. I don't like liars, and I felt very offended that the landowner would not correct these people at the businesses and force them to accredit me for my own sake. I was living in a freaking office space. Yeah, that's exactly where he wanted to keep you, like a little slave that he can go get friggin' cheap labor from. He told me not to worry about it. That's what they always tell you. They always tell you, oh, don't worry about it. Or they tell you about this big meeting they had, okay, where they talked you up to so-and-so or to this person. Or they try to tell you how they saved your job somehow. How so-and-so wanted to get rid of you, but I can't. I tell you, I saved your job. I saved you, and don't worry, I got you as long as you do what I say. This is how they all operate. He told me not to worry about it and just let them live in their fantasy land because all that matters is things are working again. I figured that made some sense. At least they were improving around the place. So I began marketing for like 4 or 5 of his businesses and cross-connecting other businesses. I planned to make a magazine in the city and got to know the dozens upon dozens of businesses downtown and received approval to put them in my publication. As time progressed, I stopped paying him money because it was mutually understood that my work was worth more than the agreed amount, and I was paid up. He even expressed at times he knows he owes me some money. I also did not want to tell him about my disability yet because I did not want him to make it easy to exploit me or appear vulnerable. He's already exploiting you because you already appear vulnerable to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be exploiting you. But I was doing all kinds of stuff. I told him I wanted to start a nonprofit and make the district less about only drinking and a lot more about the arts, like the name says. I pushed for strategies to add new lights around the outside, artwork, and all kinds of changes so the whole area would be more inviting. They took my incentives and I ran into them one day having a meeting with the city to get these things. I was confused why I wasn't invited to the meeting because they were taking my initiatives and list of items I sent him. Ultimately, he's not allowed to do, but that doesn't mean it isn't done in dishonor or on purpose for his own fake excellence. As someone who professes to love Jesus so much, you'd think, knowing I was literally sleeping in an office space, he'd try to lift me up like he always claimed it was his goal for everyone he comes into contact with. No, man, he just wants you to believe that. Meanwhile, he's just using you. He claimed one of his business partners did the meeting without telling him, and he was sorry. I was like, okay, whatever. He started taking me to church for whatever fucking reason, and then to his house afterward. His wife and son also owned bars in the area and were part of free advertising. It was part of the free advertising I was providing. Some of what I did was paid for. A lot of it was cut as investment for my own reputation, which I found out later is futile because these pieces of trash are working against me. Oh yeah, well, you're not making in money, you're making up in reputation. Another lie of the grifter narcissist. Oh, all this time you're putting, it matters. It matters in reputation, and and in the future, this is you're going to be able to cash this in. I would tell them my ideas on how I wanted to up my marketing, do more than become a nonprofit. They'd start using me to come up with and write ideas down for their own businesses, literally at their Sunday dinners while they all sat around and indulged themselves. One of his other sons treated me like shit. They were spoiled, arrogant pigs, all of them. He yelled at me one day. He's lucky I was poor at the time because I would have fucking literally ripped him into pieces, and I've gone crazier on far less than the past. They knew I was poor, so they took it as an opportunity to treat me like a fucking whipping boy. He kept trying to recruit me to try to write a movie script about his life, but he would be controlling it and I would be making it better and transforming his so-called wondrous gift to the city into a screenplay. It became clear it was an opportunity for him to use me to glorify him while he would attack my ideas to insert his own anytime he felt like it. I also did not want to be involved in his personal life anyway, nor did I think he was as great as he pretends. Especially when it was clear that he was now using Jesus to get me to his house so they can use me for free labor while they partied and bossed me around for profit. Some of the friends and artists would show up there at times, and they would all be laughing and drinking, eating fancy meats, gossiping, indulging and engaging in drama. I was then, of course, to be used as a free idea box and writer to expand their stupid, overrated lives. They lived in an expensive house surrounded by luxuries. I was supposed to sit there and come up with ideas for them. One time, him and his family with another artist literally invited me out to eat. Then he told me to literally videotape them with my camera. I began to realize that I was in some version of hell that I never knew even existed. These people were now trying to use me to turn their lives into a reality show, which, by the way, is at least $10K an episode endeavor that they wanted all for free. You don't hire someone to make full-blown episodes of you and then turn you into a reality star for free. They were all putting on weird personas and laughing, eating, and drinking. I was sitting there videotaping it with a camera just wanted to go home and get away from them. I didn't drive, and they were paying for my meal, so I felt trapped videotaping these fucking people trying to become a TV show. I was doing tons of free favors for them constantly, and it was never enough. I stopped going to his house on Sundays. Then he insisted my problems were because I didn't go to church. I confided in him that I'm struggling with severe trauma and my family abandoned me. My hometown fucked up my life because of my sexual orientation. I grew up in a redneck small town, and by the time I made it out alive, I was not in one piece. He would tell me how God doesn't like homosexuals and that my trauma isn't real. I'm just not loving God enough. So now I wasn't just a disenfranchised homeless artist sleeping in an office space while some guy was stealing my ideas and milking my talents for himself. I was also an unloved, delusional, melodramatic drama queen, and no one who God himself doesn't even like all that much. And my talents were not really from God. They were likely from witchcraft, apparently. You know, I made it this far in life because God just wants me to be someone different, and I wasn't really blessed for being a good person to get through the darkness. Instead, I felt like he stripped me and invalidated every blessing or act of mercy that was ever given to me. He was literally telling me that God really doesn't like me like I think he does. And like I said, when these narcissists start preaching God, what he's telling you is, I'm God, and I don't like you. My voice is the voice of God. They're all the same. Then what am I living for? He was constantly drinking. His whole family was. He would boss me around in front of people. I demand I get to work and start doing things for him. I knew the situation. He owed me money, but it wasn't in writing, and he could put me on the street. So I was trapped where he was treating me like trash. He would tell me to shut up, insult me when I made jokes, and tell me I'm offensive. One time we grabbed some food at a restaurant and told me his son was envious of me, and he was snickering about it. He said his son claimed I am the son the landowner always wanted, and that therefore the landowner didn't love him as much as me. I was very confused. He uses everybody. The guy abuses everybody. I reiterated, you aren't my dad. We are professionals who work together. I guess in some way, spiritually, every human can act as every other human's mom or dad in a paternal or maternal way when needed. This goes both ways, so I have no idea what he's talking about. But you are not my dad, and I am not your son. He began stealing all my ideas, insulting my clothes, my appearance in front of others. He would use my poverty to humiliate me. In public, he would bully me and try to steal items of clothing, claiming they were stupid and ugly, and offered to give me money for them so he could throw them in the trash. It was often items of clothing whose design I loved the most. I got moved around from place to place. Construction workers would enter my residence. They hired criminals from the church, and one of them tried to rob me once. Then they made excuses for him. I lived in a tiny one-room office for like 6 months. I had to hide in some of these places and pretend I wasn't there. I had to run extension cords to get electricity. No shower, no bath. I'll skip the elaborate details. It was the worst almost 4 years of my life. He started yelling at people for complimenting me and telling me I'm just a background guy. Him and his wife insulted my music and laughed about it. Now I wasn't just orphaned and poor with a God who thinks I'm a disgusting fag while I ought to receive and take no credit for anything. But now he tried to take singing away from me as well. I was basically supposed to be a washed up, worthless tool who gave him everything he wanted and then kneeled over to accept that I am just an ugly, disgusting, unlovable pile of shit for the rest of my life. I had no positive encouragement coming from anywhere. This arts community used me up and insulted me constantly. They all began to laugh that I was poor and had no shower at my house. Other people were now offering money to buy clothes from me. It was absolutely the worst. A fire occurred underground in which he then used to sue the electric company, kicked a restaurant in one of the businesses out, then used their impoverished situation to literally steal their business. I'm not sure of the logistics of it, but I know they took him to court because he was keeping insurance money from the tenants who lost businesses in the rentals, Another businessman I know had an agency in one of the buildings and angrily left, telling me that his spare was also not properly clean. His space was not also properly cleaned or sanctioned, nor was he compensated from the insurance company. Well, as mentioned, among the businesses he put out using the fire as an excuse and lying about the insurance money, he used this money to bully a restaurant into giving him their equipment. I truly believe he thinks that God loves him because he's the only true believer, and God has big plans for him. So he therefore convinces himself he is allowed to exploit anyone he comes into contact while using talk about God's love and kindness, people's basic necessities like shelter and space that he rents out to get what he wants. Yeah, he's made himself into a god. That's all he's done. Working with him and his business partner was very eye-opening because they would confide in me things they don't tell to others. They once randomly increased the rent on a guy's living space by $200, then laughed to me at the end of the day that they have the guy by the balls, basically, because they can just throw him out on the street so he can nut up or shut up. I knew then my suspicions about my own situation were true. They had no intention of compensating me for what they owed me. It was their way or the highway, exploiting my disability and poverty to ensure they get whatever they want, knowing they could just steal what they owe from me and throw me on the street, then deny it was ever an obligation. In their mind, I was their slave. I could hear the landowner tell me about all his visions he has. Many times they were literally elaborate ideas I came up with back to me at some later date with some dramatic acting about his amazing vision and bragging to me with these vivid details about his vision, that he was literally something I told him. He literally started these conversations with, I have this vision of, insert some elaborate idea I came up with. Then he would act all dramatic like a Shakespearean actor, as if he envisioned some big amazing dream himself and was revealing it to me. I said to him, dude, that's my idea that I told you about. He looked disgusted and outraged that I would actually have the audacity to speak up about it, because after all, I'm just a poor boy and no one loves me in his mind. I'm just a slave, so he throws me a breadcrumb or robs me. It's not really a sin or a crime because I should just take what I can get. If he wants to steal my ideas, I should feel ashamed that I would think I'm a visionary. He said back to me when I spoke up to him, so what, you want credit now? What's your point? I wasn't born yesterday. I know what gaslighting is. He thought I was so scared of being homeless that he could rewrite reality in front of me and I would cower before him and allow it to happen. My guess is he was coercing me to agree that my ideas were something he thought up so later he could just take credit, and he was going to derive massive narc supply from watching me say nothing. Well, that isn't the case. I bet he's done a lot of this in the past to other people. He would tell me never to take credit for anything and tell me about how selfish it is and not what God wants, because God just wants things to get done in his control, no less, no matter what it was. Then he would brag constantly about how much God loves him and has blessed him. All he's doing is bragging to you that he is God. That is it. All religious narcissists are atheists. Always. Always. They're just replacing replacing God with themselves. That's it. I started putting my logo on photos I took for my Facebook because I was starting a magazine, and he would tell me now not to advertise myself and proclaim that he owned all my photos now somehow because my work was for him, and he said, again, he was already in debt to me. But no matter what I did, my business and all my artistic talents, ideas, and personality belonged to him. He literally believed this. This is not a speculation or some abstract fear. I'm telling you 100% beyond a doubt that he believed he owned every single piece of me like an actual slave. Of course he does. He thinks he's God. So if he thinks he's God, he thinks he owns everything. He thinks everything is there for him, to please him, for his disposal. I told him that makes no sense. I'm not going to do everything for him, and I'm going to build my business so I'm not financially poor for the rest of my life. He literally said to me that God stuck me there for him. Then he started insisting how I follow him around with a notebook and pen to write down all the amazing words that flow out of his vernacular with the life-giving fruit of God's food for the thought he channels. He began insulting my speech, my vocabulary, telling me to shut up when I was around other people or whenever I would be in a situation that made it hard to get away. For instance, he would invite me to go somewhere, and as we were walking to get in the car, he would start telling me to shut up and acting very aggressively and domineering. He knew that it would be extremely hostile to just get back out of a social situation and confront him, and I did. He would no doubt be sending a text about needing to discuss my living situation like he always did anytime I established boundaries or defended my own property and energy. Music, poetry were my only refuge in my homeless years, among other art forms. He knows I wrote a 100-page epic poem that rhymes, but now I am an idiot with insufficient language and vocabulary or writing skills who needs to shut up and follow him around, making him historical. It's always there. They all have delusions of grandeur. I mean, their delusions of grandeur is nothing new. I used to go online to try to find emotional support for my situation, only to be violently abused with verbal vile and vehement, purposeful hatred from the leftist trolls who don't care who the hell they are hurting online or what your situation is. I even told many of them about my situation, and they would laugh their ass off about it. So much for being the political party of peace. Republicans weren't perfect, but it was the Democrats who would actively pursue social sites looking to harass and destroy any vulnerable or needy soul they came across, while they then turned around and played a victim, argued endlessly, or ghosted you after dropping a very calculated words or false projections and hatred to try to leave it simmering in your afterthoughts. I couldn't find support offline in this democratic arts community, which was just as toxic as Hollywood, while they painted themselves as icons of love and fairness. They were all narcissists. I can't even begin to explain that to you. No, you don't need to. I know what they are. I know what they are. I would go home and then be tortured by these psycho leftist trolls online all day and told I'm stupid, worthless, disgusting moron merely for not being one of them. I'm not even a Republican. I lost all faith in the Democrat Party because I've seen who and what they stand for. Yeah, everybody get your $2,000 stimulus checks, all you Biden voters. Oh no, they're falling on bombs on Syria. Idiots. Idiots. This is why I wanted the Republicans to lose Georgia. You get what you vote for. Suck it up. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. When you're homeless, robbed, and broken, they still ridicule you. They call you disgusting, spoiled, privileged, and tell you owe them things. They threaten any livelihood you may have and slander your name while they flaunt around and brag about how many likes they have and how many people follow and agree with them. All they care about is exploiting democracy, be that on social network algorithms and using vicious abuse in the comments to shoot down anyone outside their agendas, however innocent they may be, subscriber counts, cancel culture, whatever. Yeah, who are you telling? Who are you telling? I've been trying to warn people about the left, okay, for 8 years on this channel. Democracy is a flawed system that gives the average idiot a voice like drones in the beehive now running the queen. It's a popularity contest which only breeds narcissism. They say the greatest argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average person. I had no support, and the internet is a foul landscape who proclaims love, peace, and unity when all they care about is fame and fortune. I'm not even going into my history about the men who stole my video gaming career when I was a child, maybe in a future video. But I was preyed upon as a child in the 90s by adults who stole my career from me using piracy because I was making content to escape my childhood abuse. They character assassinated me as a first rule of thumb, brainwash me, and then use my own podium they were now controlling to encourage the community to ridicule, slander, and harass me as well. Back to the arts district manager, as he called himself. He knew about my childhood and this video game and then pretended to be deeply troubled by it before he literally took it to his full advantage to re-victimize me in nearly the same way. Anytime people thought I was cute, attractive, complimented me, laughed at something I said or did, or encouraged me in any way, he would rebuke them and insist to me that this is impossible or arrogant for me to think that I could be anything like that. I kid you not, one time a girl at a bar said that I'm the most interesting person she knows after I told her something poetic. This guy literally stood up on his bar stool, screamed across the bar, claiming that the title belongs to him, that it was stupid and ridiculous for her to ever say anything like that to me. She sat there quietly, not knowing what to do, and the entire bar got quiet, knowing full well what he meant, which was that nobody was allowed to love or appreciate me, or even think anything of me. He'd constantly threaten me and act disgusted that I could, quote unquote, be so arrogant to not follow him around and write all these amazing things that come out of his mouth. Every time I would accomplish something, he would insert himself into my situation where other professionals who looked up to me and start telling me I need to follow him around and be his assistant in front of them, while arguing about how stupid and selfish it was for me to take advantage of him and not do as I was told. He said it was God's providence that he brought me there and that God made me give him my talent to save the city. He would then begin attacking other successful business in the area, telling me that they literally stole his business by merely existing. I told him that didn't make sense. He insinuated that they rented a space from him once, then they moved on and started their own businesses, thereby stealing his magic. He also meant music and talent as well, not just business success. He believed he owned and created the talent in the district. I'm not even fucking joking with you. Watch the video link I sent. I saw it. The guy's nuts. The guy's a grifter. And I promise you, it's not just surface level he's talking about. It's far deeper, pathological, and disgusting idea that he has in his mind that he owns some magical vortex in the city, that he has given everyone their success, and that as a landowner, he owns everyone and they owe him everything. He would complain to me about how a newspaper actually told him he needed to pay for an ad. He said, I don't do enough for this city, I saved this city. On another occasion, he told me that everyone doesn't know what the hell they're doing with their property and they should just give their buildings to him because he's the only one with a vision. His wife ran a bar where musicians played to help bring business in. And he told me that the musicians were magically blessed from energy that came from his spaces, and he therefore gave them their talent. He also claimed that other people's talent in the surrounding areas also came from these places, and that these places were the apex that blessed everyone in the wider area. And therefore, when you came to him, it was merely a matter of time, and God brought you for him to reap what God has sown and put back into his district for everyone else, not for you to gain anything from. And that means taking credit as well, if he could take that away from you. It was created to put into the district which he owns, and that the fact what God's doing, that we were all there merely out of divine appointment for him to reap what is sown and nothing more. This is literally what he believes. What he believes is, this is all a lot of words, okay, for him saying, I'm God. It's all mine. I've created it. Thereby what you created is mine. Understand, when you say somebody is God, what that means. That's all this doesn't mean. I get it. If you understand who God is and what God is, okay, you understand their thinking pattern. That's not hyperbole. It's not a metaphor when I say these people are atheists and think they are God. It's not a metaphor. They believe it. They believe they create everything, and then everything is an extension of them. They believe it. He doesn't tell you this. He just uses all kinds of seductive charm and fake encouragement to lure you in. No, he just has money and property. And anybody with money, okay, not anybody with money, but if you have money and you have property, and if you're in a situation that he's in, it is very easy to make yourself God. He therefore, in my mind, was a long-lost, faded dad, and he created me. And it was just a matter of time before he got to take what belonged to him. I was not an individual who accomplished anything with my own personality. It was all put there for him to have, and God brings everyone there for him to skin their personality and dreams alive. His belief is that the community is bigger than the individual, so therefore you were made near this magical vortex in the city only for the community to take, and he was the one in charge of making sure that happens. That he will go and be the one who ruthlessly takes everything from you because he needs to go back into the community. And if that means taking credit for everything, it's only because he is divinely favored. Yeah, that's what I just explained to you. No joke, he began stealing my personality, and I can explain it no further than the time I told him I read some spiritual text once about some modern prophetic event. It was more of an observation and an interesting thought I had constructed. I read this book years ago. It's long, elaborate, and impossible to read and understand in less than a year. Well, a few days later, I ran into him literally giving this book to a business owner with a bookmark halfway through it. He saw me as I witnessed this, and then looked at me with a face like, yeah, I'm doing this, shut up and stay out of it. Then he proceeded to pretend he discovered what I had told him and gifted this man a book he had never read. Now, mind you, he is also a Bible thumper, so this book is outside his belief system. You know, just because you don't have to credit something doesn't mean you aren't a sneaky little lying fraud and a thief. He absolutely held the notion that I don't have to credit you. I wasn't even looking for credit, but when you take someone's advanced spiritual principle that I know from that I told you from a book that took me years to comprehend, then you buy the book and start handing it out in front of me while pretending you read it and came up with it, what you are doing is deliberately deceitful and incredibly fraudulent. I still typically credit people with things I've heard from them years ago, and most certainly will always tell others about people who showed me something in their presence. I do not take credit for other people's revelations and then pretend they don't exist while I take credit for it or repeat it in front of someone else. It takes 2 seconds to say, yeah, so and so led me on this very interesting material, but no. He again vindicates himself with the idea that because I can get away with I could get away with someone, I don't have to do it. Well, that's not very godlike or Christian-like, is it? This is how you know these people are fucking frauds. He never read that book. I was there when he gave it away and waited to hear him say, so and so told me about this and it was really fascinating. Nope. He purposely pretended that I was not standing there and shut me out of the situation so he could wear my spirituality like a pelt. I realized he was actively not just exploiting art and stealing other people's ideas and content, but also their entire personas, then trying to suppress their names and sabotage their self-esteem. But I can't explain the depths of hell I went through there. Backhanded compliments about my appearance, attacks on my countenance and talents, ability, interests, passions, accomplishments, beliefs, and personality. He brought me a whole wardrobe once and then began passive aggressively insinuating it was shockingly disappointing that I would not begin wearing this as a uniform. I had to explain 5,000 times in 4 years that I am not your employee and that you technically owe me money. If he really believed in Jesus like he claims, he would admit that he is in debt to someone instead of oppressing someone, knowing he could just deny it and then steal my housing from under me. It became clear he had no intention of compensating me for anything. He was only keeping me around to get stuff and then persistently making me feel like shit while he humiliated me everywhere on purpose in public. He told me multiple times that he only hangs out with me because I make him look good. This was just another way of him denying I have visions, ideas to do things. He would always purposely say, this is my graphics guy, knowing full well I was doing countless more things. My guess is he wanted to rule the city, so he decided to try to reap me for all I was worth. Rape me for all I was worth and then erase my relevance there so that he didn't have to see me rise to power. No, he just wanted to keep you under his thumb. I don't know why it took you so long to figure any of this out. I mean, you're living in an office building for 4 years. I was doing all kinds of things like putting on a festival, helping other festivals, helping the artists, and trying to get others to tackle the drug addiction and suicide problems in the arts there. No one was interested. In fact, art was barely the point. It was all about them getting praise from customers and selling drugs. There are so many times he would yell at me in public, tell me to shut up or something else. Him and his business partner literally tried to steal an entire festival idea from me once as well. But I had a couple of acquaintances at the time who were willing to defend me. His business partner was bragging to me about his big vision for cool, elaborate festival in a very specific location. I was like, dude, this whole vision and location is exactly the same festival I came to you about and some months ago and asked if you would be interested in helping. I tried to arrange a board to form a nonprofit so I could at least get grant. Like you're just like you're just grabbing a hot stove over and over and over again. And again, you're just over-explaining now, okay? Like, you're just over-explaining everything this guy did, and I get it, you want to get it out. But you're almost wrapped up in the victimhood here. I tried to arrange a board to form a nonprofit so I could at least get grants, since I was constantly doing free work while everyone in the goddamn city treated me like a piece of shit as they benefited from my advertising visions. Nobody wanted to help me, of course, except for the government. The government may be corrupt, but I tell you, at least they fed me and gave me medical when no one else would help me, regardless of how low my life sank. The government befriends you, asked few questions asked. They wanted to help me heal, be nourished, and be well. The government wants you under their thumb, just like this guy does. Just like this guy does. The government don't want you independent either. You haven't figured out by now, whoever you're taking from, you're controlled by. I had to expunge a false accusation from a false arrest from my abusive family years ago before I could get housing. After what I have seen, I'm not even sure what I believe anymore about unregulated capitalism anymore, because I think these long ones are tough. Because what I think that average people purposefully sabotage, rip off, re-victimize, defund moral and inspired people, because I know we won't sink to their level, and they don't want to compete against us. So they allow psychopaths to run the shows that as it just seems easier to them. I'm not really a fan of socialism or communism either. Well, you shouldn't be. Anyway, we live in a sick society that celebrates greed in Forbes magazine. Did you know that Bill Gates was reported by Forbes as triumphantly devising a technology to block out the sun? Let that sink in. And nobody said or did anything. Capitalism allowed Bill Gates to actually try to monopolize the sun. Sure, he says it's a climate crisis now, but all I can see is that scene from Tank Girl. All these musicians and artists were far leftist abusers who bragged incessantly about their violations against others and laughing about it, bragging about past hookups and relationships where they were dumped and discarded people, retelling them as exciting stories from the past. They would lavish about how they screwed someone over, claiming how weird and useless that person was to want them, walking around smug and haughty, drugged up, drunk, and fake befriending people while tearing conservatives to the ground as they spread their propaganda. They were always bad-mouthing religion and bragging about how amazing their new policies they'd like to see implemented are, demanding everyone stop oppressing their beliefs. I was constantly marketing for like 5 of this landowner's businesses, and I eventually just stopped. I stopped making websites, doing social media posts and high-end photography, blasting ads and managing his promotional budget. I got tired of it. It was never enough. He finally put me in an actual residential place, which then immediately resulted in him playing far more disgusted by me than before, and offended, guilting me about how much it was costing him. He owed me money for years of rent, actually, but now I finally had a place with an actual shower and hot water. He needed to start making actual money from me and not just my services. I explained to him that I've already done enough work to pay for my rent and utilities for years, and he knows it's true and did not deny it. Instead, he said, well, I need to start making cash off you. And he then told me I need to get a job and start giving him cash. My obvious thought was, I'm a grown adult, you owe me. I don't have to talk to you about what I do with my life. He would constantly message me, however, always about how we need to talk about my living arrangements. This was oppressive keywords for I can never be guilty of stealing. I will throw you out on the streets if you refuse to be my slave. How dare you defy God, and he put you here to give me these things. Always, always, always. He was always talking about how I needed to do more big business, big stuff for him, blaming me for his business failing. And he had like 10 other businesses and opened up about 5 more in the 4 years I was there. Then he blamed me for them failing, when in reality they were only surviving because I kept the whole fucking district relevant. He got intoxicated from the success and narcissistic praise from everyone and the press coverage I was creating. I made that place feel alive and happening, and all the excitement made Vogue or some big magazine announcement how the district was one of the most exciting new places to go in America. I highly doubt if I wasn't plastering all the media with my photography and cross-connecting and keeping their websites and social presence connected, that some shithole in the Wall District, that some lousy, boring place to drink would have reached such a level of notoriety. It's amazing, too, because how arrogant and delusional as they painted me out to be for asking them about stats on how the marketing was doing. They were paying artists and other people percentages of sales from events they were bustling because of my advertising. They would roll their eyes and quietly ignore me when I would say, okay, I'm just trying to gauge if the new ad is working. All the bartenders, artists, etc. wanted to take credit for everything, including this landowner. Well, hilariously, when I stopped advertising in 2 months, many of the popular nights dropped dead. Events were canceled, and the whole district started to look like a pathetic ghost town. He was outraged that I stopped. Well, I'm not going to let you eat my maven status so you can play King fucking B with the Democrat Party over my dead body while you make my life a living hell and roll your eyes like I'm a fucking moron when I talk about the ads I'm running. What they wanted was me to silently cower and sit behind the scenes, stop making art, stop being an artist, to hate myself, to do everything they said and wanted, and to let them all take trips. Let them all take the tips, the bar sales, percents, and the clout for themselves. I made them so much money, and when the people loved me, I would go out and see how the progress was. I was made to feel fresh and exciting. I made the place feel fresh and exciting in the virtual world for the first time. So bigger artists and other people started coming around, but it wasn't being paid for, and they literally tore my fucking self-esteem to the ground so that the curators could say that they were the ones doing it. Pretty funny, one of the artists, a feminist, who was stealing credit for one of my nights, and a bartender who stole credit for my initiatives. I popped in one night to see how the renowned Tuesday Night was doing a few months after I stopped advertising, because they insisted they were the ones who made it all happen. Nobody signed up for the open mic night. There were 20 people from my art gathering I created there. The open mic night, which was supported by my ads, was now dead. My local art group was still booming, and the open mic night host moved away for bigger and better things, making it seem like some big move. Well, she probably realized that some people weren't there for her, and they were there because of my communal strategies. You can run from the reality, but you can't run from the truth, honey. Enjoy your newfound freedom. You got what you deserved. I started art gatherings that met on Tuesdays and had all kinds of stuff going. This landowner and his family were making so much money and walking around in the rooms getting tons of admiration from all the patrons all the time, while he would constantly approach me to tell me I was never doing enough and trying to add new items to my list of chores like I'm his slave. I single-handedly built one of his business's online page with 700 followers on Facebook in 1 year, and that meant nothing to him as well. Somehow, him and his cronies took credit for this too, even though it was literally me who did it. I also added thousands more followers across their own pages. I updated 5 different business pages, created events, and all kinds of stuff. You name it, over and over. He just took credit for it all, allowed his friends and family, employees to deny I was doing anything, then yelled at me for trying to take credit for something that might ever make me money. I made him so successful that he was opening new businesses, but all he did was blame me for them failing because he was flaunting around, getting drunk everywhere, acting like a pig with a massive ego. He knew nothing about business. He just stole businesses' ideas, then harassed people until they fearfully did what he wanted. He mismanaged food and offended customers. He went through 6 managers in 2 years, multiple chefs. Then one day, 7 employees walked out. Every 5 seconds, he was asking me to help him make his business succeed, which I already did, and then used that to just open more businesses so he could party more at more places and play big shot. He wanted to open 50 new endeavors, all with bars, for his own ego to waltz around and call himself a king. I'm just felt like, dude, you aren't a video gamer. You're just a fucking dude with some real estate, you drunk idiot, and your businesses are failing. You're not a king. You failed at life because you don't want to take credit for things you can't even comprehend or do. Then tried to chase away and replace with people you're robbing. He wanted me to cross-pollinate all the businesses, and anytime I said no to something, a magical text would appear the following day or two saying, we need to meet for lunch and discuss big ideas as well as my living situation. Yeah, dude, you're repeating this stuff over and over. Like, we get it. He thinks he's God. He thinks he's God. If you know what that means, i.e. give him more and more free stuff, or he's removing me from my space and not ever paying me. One day he literally told me I need to capitalize on my talents because I need to start giving him cash. I had finally come to terms with being homeless, established boundaries, was never going to work. Him owing me money for what I had invested wasn't going to be paid, and he believes capitalism means he's above debt. He thinks capitalism means negotiating other people's worth because the customer decides what they pay. In his mind, I once brought a consultant in for him to get some advice, and he agreed to pay her $60. Then at the end said to me, I'm not paying her. She's not worth that. He literally believes capitalism means he can negotiate what he pays after the fact, and if you can't defend yourself financially, then all it is where it should be, then, and that isn't stealing, it's capitalism. He thinks he's above debt. My succeeding in business was purposefully being thwarted and destroyed by him and others. All my ideas he took credit for, he turned people against me. One time, a friend of the family came to the bar before his wedding, and they got him so fucked up he actually died. He told me my job is to make him graphics and be the back end where nobody sees me. I was obviously doing way more than this, and I am an artist who was born to be seen. But he said he's the visionary. And that it's his job, and he went around and asked me and others for our visions and then stole them. He even told me once he got his idea for one of his businesses from one of the local famous musicians who told him her idea. I get it. He steals from everyone. But I'm going to tell you this, Anonymous. If you constantly go around trying to explain every single detail and over and over and over again, people's eyes are going to glaze over. And people decide that's how you get That's how you get called a hypochondriac, and that you exaggerate everything. This is how. Okay? You need to use a lot less adjectives than adverbs. Okay? Make your point and move on. Okay? Trying to over-explain everything, exactly what he wants you to do, because you end up looking crazy. I brought it up to him again later, and he said he never said that. In the end, he screamed at me one day and threatened to lock me out on the streets and said I need to find a new place to live. I said I've done at least 90,000 of unpaid labor in 3 years. He claimed I did it for God and was disgusted I would expect him to pay for what he profited from, and that he owes me nothing and I need to get out of his buildings in a few months because I refused to give him free work and do everything he told me to do. He laughed one day, saying he ruined my business. The winters were cold, and I would just pray to die to a God that apparently didn't care. Nothing changed, not before it took its toll on me. I did move out, and he literally acted as if we were on good terms if I never existed. I told him to get a hard drive, and I would give him files from the work. He brought a new hard drive, and I loaded it up and asked if he was ever going to use it again. He said he likely wouldn't, but it was lightning speed. He owed me $90,000 as he even acknowledged. I asked for the hard drive, and he said, "Ooh, well, that was $200. Let's see if we can strike a deal." I said, "Never mind." When I left, he texted me one day asking for more files. I told him to go burn in hell. This is the man who wanted to save the world for God and who God loves so much, as he promised to help everyone else. I watched him also try to sabotage and badmouth other businesses around him, saying they don't deserve anything because they stole my business, literally. He opened up a restaurant and then claimed the restaurant that had been open for 5 years stole his business for being successful and for existing, and wanted everyone to remove their ads from everywhere. I finally got approved for disability because they recognize I can't get stable work when I had erratic, complex, traumatic meltdowns. He asked me the final month or so as I was moving out if I got approved for disability, HA, and got this for disability, haha, then laughed with the guy next to him. Well, the joke is on him because I did get approved almost immediately, actually. I just needed to sit in front of a judge, and it took too long, but him and his associate waited no time deliberating. They approved me almost the next week. I live in constant fear, judgment, and lack of privacy, feeling like an ugly, worthless piece of trash who belongs nowhere and deserves nothing. I lived off food from food banks and went to therapy paid for by government benefits. Everything I did resulted in ungrateful insults and attacks on my character, appearance, and abilities. He barged into my living space one morning without knocking, hollering, and telling me to get up and come join him, which basically involved me going down to his stupid business while he drank and told me more shit he thought I should be doing for free. Being unable to get a part-time or full-time job while I was waiting for Social Security approval, I was trapped in this situation. I thought many times about going out west and being homeless, and constantly every day I had to tell myself I have and can and will, while I stood my ground as much as humanly possible. I feel like it felt to me like his bottom line attitude was as follows: God loves me and put me in power, not you. I have money you don't, so you don't get any power or respect. I determine your worth, not you. I could find something dirt cheap, and since you can't defend yourself, everything you do is worth the same as the cheapest service or purely free because God put me in power and you can't do anything. This is divine providence. It's my way or the highway. I owe you if I owe you something, you will be punished for ever thinking I am in a subservient position in any way. You are worth nothing. All you're saying is, I'm God. It's been a little over a year since I moved out, thanks to the judge who helped me. I've been struggling constantly, looking in the mirror, trying to overcome an endless barrage of non-stop abuse and degradation. Thank you, Ollie. You're a star. You gave your life to help others in a way that sheds light while you have exposed the corruption. I know it isn't easy being where you are and living in fear also. God bless you, and I hope you know that it's not easy to relive triggers and traumas for everyone else's own enlightenment. You deserve a lot more than you've been given, so please put a smile on your face a whole lot more. Here's a link. Okay, here's a link to the audio of the guy giving the TED talk. I did. It was at the beginning, and I clicked on it earlier. You can hear that he literally claims that his buildings are priceless and worth more than anything else on earth because of simply existing in their own unique space. I'm not exaggerating either, because after knowing him for 4 years, I'm telling you this isn't a metaphor. This is what he thinks. He told me that the artists there and successful people were only blessed and talented because of their stay in his buildings. He literally convinced himself that I was just another tool God created and blessed him with his special energy, and then brought it to him like a piece of meat to steal all he could from me back for himself. He literally believes this. It's hard to have any self-esteem because I had nothing and nobody. No family encouraging me, and just extremely capitalistic vampires constantly telling me I'm an arrogant, obnoxious piece of trash for creating. I designed a dozen logos for him, ran and branded multiple Facebook pages and programs, ads, magazine ads, photos, strategies, business goals and concepts, ideas, managed an electrical billboard, and for years with recurring new ideas, programming, ran community events for years, offline meetups that built their businesses up, ran promotions, printed banners, etc. All these artist moguls and artists just ran through me, used me, and pissed all over me, actually. He would try to recommend people to me who wanted me to design high-end marketing for them at dirt cheap prices. Everyone there wanted everything for free. Well, that's the way artists are, and they're cheap. Okay? And you find the people with the most money are usually the least generous. The richest people out there are usually the least generous. They usually want everything for free. That's the way it is. That's the way it is in capitalism. That's the way it is in narcissism. That's the way it is in general. All these rich fucks, okay, especially your neoliberals, okay, who are out there preaching kindness and fairness and equality for everyone, are the cheapest and least charitable among us. Why? Because they all see themselves, just like this guy sees themselves, as a god. And gods don't have to pay anything. You should just do for God and worship God. He told you he's God. Believe him. Believe him. Understand what that means. When they say they're God, they're not speaking metaphorically. It is not a metaphor. They act like it. They believe it. Everyone there wanted everything for free. I tried to rally them to do nonprofit, and instead they were interested in using me like an established nonprofit for their able-bodied selves. Multiple suicides and deaths occurred in the community. People used each other, backstabbed, and gossiped nonstop. Everyone was drunk constantly. It was absolute hell. Like I said, I was planning on making a magazine. Instead, these businesses just used what I was doing to boost their own profits and purposely tried to sabotage me. The city itself saw what I was doing and invited me in to give me grant money to start my magazine. I went in, they asked me what I was doing and needed to see it. I went over the details of the magazine. They brought all kinds of women in from the departments and told them to have me show them what I was doing because she was so impressed. Then at the end, she said, okay, sorry, we aren't investing in this. A year later, they came out with a downtown magazine that was almost identical to what I was doing. I told the landowner guy who owes me money that I needed some cash to print some small public... You just keep going back to this guy, huh? That I needed some cash to print some small publication, which can literally be done on a dime considering the amount of money he owed me and how much money he blows on himself and his friends every month in partying and pleasure. He said, for what? I said, for my magazine I've been working on, why I'm here. He said, oh, that makes no sense. I see no need to invest in anything like that. Then I told him later about how the city stole my concept from my magazine, just looking for emotional support. He looked at me dead in the eye and said, copying is the highest form of flattery. You need to stop getting so angry and learn to capitalize on your talent. Oh, so the government stole from you, just like this guy stole from you. You're figuring out they all just protect each other? Get away from all of them and stop over-explaining all, like, I got it. And everybody in your life has got it at this point. I found out as I was leaving the district that he was caught beating his wife in the past and someone who confided in me. He bribed a witness who saw him beat his wife in the silence and also found a phone with gay porn on his that used to be his, but his son had. He blamed it on his son. They still don't know who it was. But let me state for the record, I feel zero pity for any in-the-closet sociopath who fancies same gender and terrorizes society while stealing other people's identity and confidence. This man belongs in jail for the rest of his life. Another girl there who was an entrepreneur like myself was really disturbed one day when I was transferring files for her. She's been his right-hand girl for a time after I backed off. She was quiet and professional. She asked if I was ever coming back, and I said, no, this place is. She giggled and said, yeah, real mousy. I said, fucked up. She said, yeah, fucked up, like real fucked up. Then she broke down with some deeply held trauma and told me she feels like she's trapped in a cult working there. He was so nice at first and so complimentary. Of course, that's how cults drag you in. She left and we never did speak again. I wanted to because I needed validation just as much as she does, but she didn't want to risk her job, I guess. But she was very disturbed, and I know I'm not the only person who thinks it. I spoke with many people who fled the district running. It's very rarely calm and peaceful. This particular girl said she was sexually hitting on her one day, and she felt like in a dark office of one of the cool spaces he wanted to show her, but she doesn't know. He's abusive, she said. He's paranoid and crazy. Told her his son was sent into this world by the devil. I cut contact with her and others in the district because they've been endorsing and using money he gives them to lure new people into the hell for his purposes. I honestly don't believe the guy is a paranoid schizophrenic despite what many would claim. I believe these are delusions of a psychopath obsessed with power who thinks God is his personal little servant that favors him above all, and nobody confronts or stands up to them. Then he runs away with fears of losing his ill-gotten wealth and power all day. When any of us do establish boundaries or resist his abuse, he either pushed against them, keeps pushing against them, manipulates them, uses others to bully us out of our own decision, threatens people's situation or slanders us and removes, while he steals what you just go, dude, you're just using way too many words. It's just on and on and on. This is a life hack I'm giving you. It's too much. You over explaining everything. Everything. You've said all of this multiple times over. We get it. What you don't understand is he thinks he's God. He thinks he's God. This is how they think. I believe he's driven himself into a world where everything is about him acquiring power and nothing else matters. Some workers' union finally protested one of his stupid projects, claiming he was cheating the city out of $500,000 in taxes. They stood out there for months on end. He, of course, played the victim, and I assume their efforts were in vain because most people in America are literally descended from rebellious trash who hate giving prosperity to people who deserve it. They want all the money to be in the hands of the easiest competition and then conspire to make sure worthless pigs like this not only get away with, but they re-victimize their victims on purpose because they like watching talent get robbed, because it means that the least talented person is their capital competition. That's what cancel culture is all about in most situations. It's about stealing power from those who deserve it so that mediocre trash can run the show and reap the rewards and fruits by making gifted and intelligent people desperate. He was giving free space to other people who were fully able-bodied and had nothing wrong with them, but he ruthlessly terrorized me for anything he could get. He catered almost entirely to non-Christians, despite how much he proclaimed himself to be a servant of the Lord and demanded others be as well. No, they want you to be a servant to him. They want you to serve him, not the Lord. Because they're atheists. This man even spoke constantly about how he cares little how little he cares about money and how nothing is about money. He would quote Bible scripture about the rich man through the eye of the needle and insisted we should never worry about money unless, of course, he wanted some. John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it. Let me try that again. John, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. What you are not understanding here, Anonymous, is this guy thinks he's God, not metaphorically. Okay? They want you to worship them. They replace God so you will worship them. It's a cult. And that's what you've been dealing with, okay? And you need to stop over explaining yourself, okay? Because if you went in I see why you got disability so easily. Because if you went in and you talk like this, the judge is like, all right, there's no way that this person is can work. There's no way they have, because their social skills are destroyed. Understand something. It's not God. He has replaced God because he wants you to worship him. I hope that helps. Thank you for your story, Anonymous, and thank you to John for sponsoring. Thank you to everybody watching. If you're still here, please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like me to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Refuge from Narcissism. Take care.